Our political correspondent, Mzwandile Mbeje. Mr. Mbeje, very good morning to you. The second largest economy in the world wants to talk to Africa. Why?
Thank you very much. As you have said, the second largest economy wants to talk to Africa because Africa has got a huge potential for investment for so many people. China has really identified this market, which it thinks it's so untapped. Then it has the opportunity to really engage with Africa. I mean, earlier, as you said, President Xi made it clear that this kind of help he is offering to Africa doesn't come with any strings attached to it. It's a relationship that wants to be a win-win situation. You know, China needs a lot of raw materials from Africa, and of course, Africa still needs a lot of development insofar as issues of infrastructure. Of course, there is that evidence where we have seen really China building a lot of airports in the African continent, a lot of railways, a lot of roads. So you can see what they say, they follow with action. And our president, President Cyril Ramaphosa, by the way, who is co-chairing this FOCAC summit, also spoke about the importance of this gathering. He spoke about the relations between Africa and China dating back many, many years. He actually went further to say the first contact was not actually necessarily with the Europeans in terms of Africa, but it was with the Chinese 70 years before the Europeans made contact with the Africans. So this relationship from these leaders look really set to be strengthened, given that President Ramaphosa yesterday undertook a state visit reciprocating what was done by President Xi just a little over a month ago when he went to South Africa for a BRICS summit. He started by a state visit, and there China committed about $14.7 billion towards South Africa. So you can see there that this relationship is really going far. It's not only restricted to South Africa, but it's the relationship really that touches the whole of Africa.
Mzwai, give us a sense of the time difference. Exactly what time does the summit start where you are, and the kind of interaction South African business people have already been having with the Chinese business community ahead of the summit?
The time difference, when you greeted me, you said good morning, so I was a bit confused because where I am now, it's already in the afternoon. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I should have said good afternoon to you. So there's a 6-hour difference. So we've long been up. We're expecting the official opening of the summit to happen Chinese time at 4:45, and I think South Africa's time will probably be 11:15. I'm not very good at maths, so that's when the official opening will be happening. So what happened earlier was that these two leaders, together with their counterparts from the African continent, interacted with a number of business representatives from across the African continent and indeed from here in China, talking about a range of issues in terms of what can be done to increase this relationship. Because it doesn't really help to talk about the relationship but not identifying the tangible projects that both these two people need to embark on. I mean, China has been very clear because the opportunities in Africa are so abound. It says it wants to help with skills development, infrastructure, I mean, human resources development. So it's very clear. And Africa, having the young population, really can really provide countries like China with a lot in terms of the expertise, in terms of the manpower as well. So this kind of relationship and the exchange of views will really be beneficial to both these people.
You talk about tangible developments, and South Africa already, the Bank of China is already based here in Sandton, and the BRICS regional bank is also based here. So we're seeing those systems being put into place already. Tell us about the agreements that were signed yesterday and how these will impact the other members of the African Union who are attending FOCAC today.
If we speak perhaps specifically about South Africa's relations with China, well, needless to say, the biggest trading partner of South Africa at the moment is China. And of course, China now invests, the top continent that China invests in now is Africa. So you can see already these relations are at a very high level. But talking about agreements that were signed, yesterday we had about 5 agreements between these two countries, and they related mainly to issues of climate change, issues of skills development and trade. So you can see that whatever issues that they agree on, so they need to make sure that they follow it up with tangible action. Insofar as the wider continent is concerned, the issue really that is topping these kinds of discussions is economic development. So when you're talking about economic development, particularly on the African continent, you're looking at the infrastructure, you're looking at human resources development, and you're looking at really a number of issues that remain really a problem for Africa. I mean, there are still diseases which can easily be preventable, but because there is not a know-how in many countries on the African continent, a country like China is very helpful in that regard. So, just to take you back again, this president here, President Xi from China, was re-elected earlier this year. And then his first priority was the African continent. When he was en route to BRICS in South Africa, he went to Senegal, he went to Rwanda, basically underscoring the importance of this relationship. So we hope that when those two leaders, President Xi and President Ramaphosa, address the joint press conference, remember they are the co-chairs, they will address the joint press conference tomorrow to communicate the outcomes of this meeting. So they would really touch on the issues of economic development and cooperation.
So just in terms of South Africa's position on the continent, what does it mean for President Cyril Ramaphosa that he's co-chairing this significant event?
It's very significant, particularly for South Africa. As much as South Africa is part of the bigger African continent, but many countries, including China, also view South Africa as a very important ally. Because China wants really to exploit the opportunities in Africa, they need to be able to set up base. And if you want to set up base, you need a country which is stable, which has strong institutions, which has proper structures in place. So South Africa provides all of that to countries like China. So for South Africa really to co-chair this summit, so does indeed tell you that as much as it's equal in terms of sovereignty with other countries on the African continent, but its unique nature of being the highly developed country on the continent really makes it a gateway for whoever wants to invest on the African continent. Because if you want to go to Africa, you look towards a place that is stable, a place that you know your returns are safe. So that is why South Africa really is featuring prominently here, and the kind of role that it's playing is really huge. Not only is it leading itself as South Africa, it's also leading the entire continent.
What is the significance of the summit coming at a time when China's relations with the United States are a bit shaky, and the United States' relations with the rest of the world in terms of economic and trading relations also are not on solid ground?
You know, what they normally say is that sometimes where there are issues where you would say are weaknesses. Some people would always find strengths there. Look at the issue of the trade war that is currently taking place between the number one economy in the world and the second biggest economy in the world, that is China and the United States. Basically, what it does is that it forces countries like China really to look elsewhere. And looking elsewhere means paying more attention to those countries like South Africa, or rather like Africa in general. Because at the moment, the biggest economy is taking a posture of being isolationist. So in that situation, it's forcing other countries really to pull together. As they pull together, yes, in the short term, they may be hurt by some of the actions of the United States because it's the biggest. But in the longer term, it is forcing this kind of cooperation that China really will emerge as the leader. Because if you look at the trends, China is set to take over at some point as the global leader in terms of economic power. So if a country like United States really is abdicating its responsibility in terms of leading the world, it's giving that opportunity to countries which are aspiring to take this role, like China. And I think a forum like this is a good platform for China to really launch itself. And if you understand the vision of this president, President Xi, he's made it clear that he really wants to be out there, to be seen there, to develop together with his neighbors. I mean, he calls Africa his friends. So if he then pulls, if he pulls together friends, it means they'll be able to be a united force going forward.
Mzwai, just to wrap up, we can see your background. You're with other global journalists, I imagine, eagerly awaiting the official opening of FOCAC. What can we expect? Who is attending, especially in terms of the South African delegation?
In terms of the South African delegation, we have about 15 ministers accompanying President Cyril Ramaphosa, and a number of business people who are here really to be part of this occasion. So you can see South Africa is represented by a very high-powered delegation. And from the African continent in general, because this forum is a forum really that includes China and the rest of Africa, we have about 50 African heads of state. So you can see how important they take this forum, so that they want to be where their colleagues are, they want to be where their peers are, because this is the opportunity really to craft the architecture of how the global outlook should be. So South Africa, very well represented from the business point of view and from the government point of view. In fact, even South African media is here in their numbers because they want to catch this story.
Mzwandile Mbeje is in Beijing. Firstly, it was the state visit, and now the beginning of FOCAC today, and we'll continue to follow that story. Thank you very much for your time, Mzwandile. Another story we're following today.